Hi everyone, Stepan here. In today's video I'm going to show you my round 4 game from the Graz Open. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that I had an extremely poor start to the tournament with 3 losses, which has never happened. So obviously I was feeling pretty down, but I wanted to get back into it. So I'm facing a low rated opponent, rated 1600. She's young, I want to say 14, 15, something like that. I didn't want to risk anything. I wanted to get a type of position I know, so I went for the London. I've been playing mainline d4 stuff usually, but in this game I just wanted to, since I couldn't prepare, there were no games of hers online, so I just wanted a position I know and get through the opening without any complication. Okay, so knight f6, knight f3, we get a King's Indian type setup. Bishop e2 is normal, d6, h3, preventing knight h5 ideas, knight bd7, castles, b6, all very standard, going for the double fianchetto. Knight bd2, several other moves are possible here, c4 is possible, but I like the setup with the knight on d2, because often if both c5 and e5 are played, there are ideas with knight c4. Bishop b7, bishop h2, just moving away in anticipation of e5, saving a future tempo. Rook e8, preparing e5, c3, e5. Now, this position I know, and I know it well. There are two options here. You can go for a4, trying to undermine the queenside structure, open up your rook, or provoke b5, or you can take on e5. I don't really like taking on e5 because the position tends to get equal quite quickly, something like knight c4 and knight e4, maybe queen c2. So I don't really like opening the position up. This, as you can see, is a symmetrical pawn structure, which I don't want to allow against a lower rated player. Okay, so I played a4. The only way to respond to this is a6, preparing to meet a5 with b5. And now queen b3. Again, this is usual, trying to create some pressure on f7, some pressure on b6, if c5 is ever played, and just getting my queen to the best possible square. Usually this queen ends up on a3 and b4 follows with c4, c5 in the future. And here my opponent played e4, which is a very committal move and not a good move, because e4 sort of kills this bishop, and my knight has a future. It's not a bad piece. This I faced before, and I'm comfortable with this rerouting. So I went knight e1. And in conjunction with e4, my opponent's next move is a huge mistake. It's a strategic mistake that ended up costing her the position. It's hard to suggest a move though. I don't know what to suggest. Maybe d5 is better than one she played, but that opens up my bishop. Maybe queen e7 is sensible. Again, I'm not sure, but her next move, a5, is definitely a huge mistake. The reason a5 is a mistake is that it makes this poor knight extremely good. All of a sudden, after a5, this knight is going to be the best piece on the board. If you don't see how, you can pause the video. Okay, so the idea is knight c2 to a3 to b5 with constant pressure on c7. And of course, if c6 is ever played, then d6 is weak and b6 is weak. So I played knight c2 immediately. Queen e7, knight a3, and now h5, going for the standard reti type of attack. Unfortunately, my opponent doesn't really have any pieces near my king, and I don't have to be afraid. I could have played bishop f4 to prevent g5, but since g5 isn't a threat and I have a tempo to gain, I just played knight b5. This has to be defended against. Rook ac8, and now I could have played queen a3. Queen a3 was definitely an option, simply threatening stuff like knight c7, for example. knight c7. And this position I wasn't so sure about, but it's definitely more pleasant for me. Although I'm not sure I would have given up 2 pieces for a rook in that position. But I do have bishop b5 to follow up, and my center is moving forward. So queen a3 was definitely an option, but I wanted to prevent g5 and go for b4. And since I'm gonna go b4, that would sort of block my queen on a3. So I played queen d1. Now queen d1 still gives me a ton of chances, of course, with b4 and rook c1, pressure on c7. But it also prevents g5, so I think I sort of prevented any counterplay even before it was necessary. So knight h7 was played, rook c1 was played. I could have gone for b4 immediately. Knight g5, again, not really threatening anything except for maybe a transfer to e6, defending c7, but okay, I played b4. Now this really should be taken, otherwise I take and go knight c4 and win a pawn. So takes, and now this is very unpleasant. White should already be winning here. It's really hard to suggest a move, and my opponent blundered here. My opponent went knight f6, and now if you want you can pause the video and find the win for white. Okay, so I thought I had time to make this even more powerful. I saw it, and usually when I don't play winning moves immediately, it's because I missed them. This one I didn't miss, which is even worse. I just thought I could prepare it even better, but there's time to defend. Obviously the winning move is rook c7, and if the queen moves I win the bishop. If rook takes, I play bishop takes, and I don't even know what to suggest, something like this, and it's over. But me not being well, completely in the game, I guess, I played queen b3, and queen b3 is such a stupid move. Firstly, stuff like bishop d5 is possible. Secondly, the fact that I've connected my rooks doesn't make a single bit of difference for this position. It just makes the position easier for black to defend. That being said, I'm still winning. Queen b3 isn't a bad move, and it's pretty good, but it doesn't win on the spot. So my opponent defended against the threat. So now, of course, if rook c7, bishop d6, they go rook d6, and they just lost a piece. But here's my follow-up, and it's pretty good. Knight a7. The rook has to move away, and now knight c6, and the bishop has to take, and rook c6. And this is... eventually, black is going to have to resign. C7 is so weak. These two bishops are so powerful. These two knights are so bad that black basically has no hope. Now, of course, I could have won immediately with rook c7, but this was fine too. Rook a7 played, which makes the rook very passive. I played rook fc1, rook to d7, and when rooks are disconnected along a rank like this, that makes them pretty bad. I went bishop b5 here, just giving myself a tempo with rook c2. Knight e8 played, defending, and now I could have played rook c2 straight away, and after rook d8 bishop c6. That would have just killed all counterplay and prepared queen to d5, winning this pawn. So that was possible, but instead of knight e8, I played a weird move. I played queen d5. I wanted to get pressure on e4 with h4. And also prepare rook c2 to be a bit more powerful. But yeah, I ended up moving the queen back. I think I just should have gone for rook c2 straight away. But I have time. It's not as if black can do something. Bishop h6, and I admitted my mistake immediately. I don't want my queen there. I went back. Knight e6, defending the pawn once more. Now finally rook c2, rook d8. But the problem with knight e6 is that it undefends the e-pawn, which I cannot take straight away, but I can reroute my knight to a more useful square if possible. I went... also, I was afraid of knight takes e5 in this position. Of course, for the moment, that's really not a threat, but it ties down my rook. So I just wanted to get out of the way. I went knight f1. Still, I am not in a rush. Knight g7 was played. And now finally bishop c6, blocking any attempt of counterplay. However, after knight f1, there was a chance for my opponent to fight back. Knight f1 is a bad move because it allows black to play c5, and it doesn't solve all the issues. And I saw c5, but I misassessed it. I was thinking d5 and knight c7 and bishop c6. And I thought this position had to be good for me after knight a6 and b5 and knight b4. And that's true. White is still much better, but it's more complicated now. Now my queen is tied down. I probably have to give up the exchange. Probably the best move is something like rook d1. I'm not sure. If I go something like rook c3, black is actually okay. So knight f1 was definitely a mistake. I shouldn't have allowed c5. But okay, knight to g7, and now I prevented c5 with bishop c6. Now the position is just completely dominating again, if c5 isn't an option. So g5 played, knight d2. I went back now that there is no knight d4. Knight f6, rook c3. I wanted to play queen c2 in some positions and maybe put additional pressure on c7 with queen c2, so e4 and c7. Queen e6 played, offering a queen trade, but the queen trade simply loses by force. So I took queen takes. If pawn takes, then I can take on e4. And if knight takes, as happened in the game, then d5, and again I'm gonna take on e4. Knight g7 and rook c4, preparing to take the pawn. Of course, rook e8 is impossible. g4 played, knight e4, knight e4, rook e4, gh3, gh3. Not that it matters much. In fact, I would argue that opening up the h file helps me a bit more because this rook is on a7. It also creates a weakness on h5, which is a bigger weakness than the pawn on h3. Knight f5 played, king f1, king f8. And here I had a long think. Several pawns are going to need defending. So the a4 pawn and the e4 pawn, if I decide to move my bishop away. Of course, knight e7 is coming next. So I decided to play a strange move. I played b5, which seems counterintuitive, but it actually solves all of my problems. Had I gone bishop b5, then knight e7, and I would have to go for rook h4, trading off these pawns. But even though I thought this was winning, I didn't want to give black any sort of counterplay, and with my pawn on e4 gone, that would mean counterplay. So instead I just went b5, and I can defend this pawn with rook cc4, and then I can start picking everything off. So this was safe enough. My bishop is kind of poor, but it's gonna have to be traded off for the knight eventually, because the knight has no future. So bishop g7 played, bishop f4, just grabbing a better diagonal. Bishop f6, king e2, knight e7, and now bishop h6 check. Of course, if bishop g7, then bishop g7, king g7, rook e7 winning. So king g8 is forced. I played bishop h6 just to displace the king and also undefend the knight. King d3, improving my king. I'm not in a rush again. Black's position is very loose. And now finally knight c6. I don't think that's a bad move. It's a necessary evil. The knight is just bad. My bishop is extremely good. If my bishop is there, the other rook can never get back into the game. So knight c6. Of course, rook c6. King h7, bishop f4, king g6, and bishop to g3. I wanted to give myself the option to play bishop h4. If I can trade off the bishops, then the rook endgame is... there is no hope. With bishops on the board, it's a bit harder for me to win, or at least I thought so. King g7, bishop h4, just trading, takes, king g6, rook e4, and again you can see why the rook endgame is completely winning. I'm going to bring my rook back to the 4th rank, I'm going to keep control over the e file, and then I'm going to infiltrate on e7, so that's the plan. King f6 played, preventing rook e7, rook cc4, rook g8, rook f4 check. The king cannot go to the e file, because I can check again and win the f7 pawn, or play rook f6, rook f4 and win the the f7 pawn. So king g6, rook c4, now I have the e file again, rook f8, rook e7, rook b7. I don't really understand rook b7, but okay. Rook c4, rook c8, rook d7, and my plan is to play rook takes d6 if they don't defend, check, or play rook e4, well, rook e4, rook e7, or rook f4 and take on f7. Rook a8 played. I don't want to trade pawns, I don't want to free up black's rooks, so I didn't take on c7, instead I played king c3. Rook a7, king b3, now the pawn is defended, I am threatening to take if one of the rooks moves. So now black is basically in Zugzwang with the rooks cannot move. Black ended up playing king g7 and I played rook f4 and black resigned. Of course, if c5 or c6, I just take on f7 with the f rook, for example, and then I win the rook. And after rook f4, if nothing else is played, it's hard to suggest a move. I don't know, king g6, then I just take, and black actually gets mated unless king g5 is played. So after rook f4, my opponent resigned. This is the type of position I like. The only thing I regret is not taking on c7. That was very poor. It's a very simple tactic, and I did see it. My opponent saw it. I moved too late though, but yeah, I still won. I still got the position I wanted. And if you can take anything from this game, it's that e4 is very risky to play in these positions. And after knight e1, don't give the knight the b5 square. This was just after a5. To be honest, I knew that I was going to win. That may be an overstatement, but it seemed so simple strategically. Pressure on c7 and pressure on d6 with the knight on b5. And it actually happened just the way I imagined. So this is an example of how weakening only one square can be terminal. And also, if bishop a6 is played to control b5, then I just trade and get into b5 anyway. So yeah, I would say this is the worst mistake of the game, and rook c7, missing rook c7 is a close second. Okay, so that was my round 4 game. Finally I got a point, and tomorrow I'm going to show you my round 5 game, which I think was my best game of the tournament. Not that the competition is fierce. Okay, I hope you got something from this one. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.